Welcome to Mental Health Matters, a podcast of KU Leuven Healthy. With this podcast, we will share inspiring stories to keep young researchers in a good mental shape. I'm Pieter Jan, PJ, and this is Robin.
Hello.
We are both two young researchers at the KU Leuven and we will host this podcast.
In each episode, we will talk with a PhD student or a postdoc of the KU Leuven about their health and well-being. Through the different episodes, we will try to find answers on different questions like how do you stay confident and resilient in a highly competitive world?
How do you deal with stress, isolation or anxiety?
How do you create a good work-life balance?
And how do you stay motivated during your research process? Find out the answers together with us and get inspired. Discover the advice of different experts of KU Leuven on the broad range of topics. And at the end of each episode, Robin and I try out an exercise or some advice under the guidance of our guests.
So let's discover new habits to stay healthy and in a good mental shape. Hi PJ, it's good to see you.
It's nice being back, thank you.
So actually funny because when I was walking here, I saw you crossing me with your bike. Do you use your bike often?
You were the one I almost ran over. I try to bike as much as I can. I use it to go to work, to get to my sports. It really helps me to disconnect my mind from life and from work when I leave my office. And it's just easier by bike to make the switch. Do you have that too?
Yeah, I actually live very close by, so I can easily go to work by foot. I really like that, but sometimes I feel like I even live too close because 500 meters is not a big walking distance to disconnect with your mind. But I actually think it's very interesting that you raise this topic of disconnection because specifically in our job doing a PhD in which you're constantly online, you're available through your mails, your computer, it's hard from time to time to disconnect. And this is also why we invited Alice here today because she is a first-year PhD student who actually studies digital disconnection.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what she has to say about disconnecting in this modern world.
Yeah, me too. So let's jump right in. Hi, Alice. Welcome.
Hi.
Before we begin, you should know that we start every episode with a short and everyday dilemma, and you don't have to think about it that hard. You can just answer the first thing that comes in your mind.
Okay.
So are you ready?
Yeah, of course.
So Alice, if people want to contact you, do you prefer that they email you or that they call you?
Oh, I would say I prefer calls because I think it's more spontaneous, but then I would prefer that you call me with good news and not with bad news. Then you can email me.
Always have bad cell service or having to read everything aloud what you text?
I would say the first one because that's my role as a digital disconnection researcher.
Okay, and then we have a final one. Do you use a regular toothbrush or an electric one?
A regular one, yeah.
A regular one,
yes.
Okay. We already know that you study digital disconnection. How did you exactly ended up here? Why did you choose to study the topic of digital disconnection?
So I'm a PhD student at the Department of Work and Organization Studies. I look at what employees do or could do to take more distance from their digital technologies, both during work but also outside work. Because I think this whole topic of digital connection and disconnection is very important.
So it's all about disconnection, but can you tell us a bit more when you started to notice that you have been connected too long online?
I think there are several contexts in which disconnection can be important. What I struggle with the most in my daily life is when I need to work, do a focused task, and that I just cannot have my concentration the way I would like to have it because I'm distracted all the time. And I don't know if you recognize it, but when you start working and you think like, okay, I will do this task today, but then you open your mailbox and you see there are a couple of emails. You think, okay, I will quickly handle it. And then actually it takes more time than you wished. And then there's also a chat coming in from a colleague. And then it reminds you, oh yeah, I still have to answer a chat from my friend. Okay, I will just quickly look at my WhatsApp. And then finally you end up on your social media feed. And we all know that this takes a lot of our time.
You're lost.
And in the end, you lose a lot of time by doing sometimes useful, but sometimes also definitely use less things on your screens.
How important is it for you to get that disconnection?
I think it's very important both for your productivity and your focus, your concentration during work, but in a broader sense also for your well-being, because especially today in a telework context, it's sometimes difficult to see the difference between work time and private time.
Specifically related to doing a PhD now, since Corona, we have noticed that we basically just need a computer and we can do our work everywhere.
Indeed.
And then it's, of course, hard to disconnect from time to time. And it's not just about disconnecting from your digital device, but also even when you're not connected online, it's also hard to disconnect from work time to time. So it's not just turning off your like digital device, but also disconnecting from your mind.
For me, I use my bike, and I have to bike 20 minutes to get home. So that's a way to leave everything behind.
Yeah.
So I need that physical disconnection from my workspace to get off topic of my own PhD.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you have other tips and tricks.
Yeah, I think there are many tips and tricks, but it's all about using them properly. For me, there are two pillars, if I can say it's like that, and most of them I learned from interviews that I did with other people. The first one is, I think we should be more mindful about how our day is organized. At least that's what I try to do. I lately tried to really organize my workday in sort of blocks, and I try to have at least one focus block, ideally more than one, in which I work very concentratedly. So what do I typically do then? I would like switch off my Teams notifications. I would, if possible, close my mailbox, also put my smartphone away, because I don't know how it is for you, but I have really this automatic behavior of grabbing my phone and looking at what's happening, even though I didn't intend to do it. It's really automatic. Also, what I do is like I bought this noise cancelling headphone, and the moment that I put it on, it's like entering my bubble, my concentration bubble.
In the zone.
Yeah, in the zone, indeed. So that's for the focus moments. But besides this first pillar, which consists of planning your day and working in blocks, for example, I think there's a second pillar that's important, and that's about how you communicate about your boundaries towards other people and towards yourself as well, actually.
Yeah, I do that sometimes when I have an overload of emails that I need to answer. I dare to put off an out of office notification like, it's pretty busy right now.
Yeah.
I will get to your email as soon as possible. But that also gives me some rest, like I don't have to answer this right now or within the day.
Yeah, that's definitely a very good trick. Out of office messages.
And I was also lucky with my supervisor, who also said like emails after 9 o'clock, it's not okay. You don't have to work in the weekends. So she's also keeping boundaries straight for me. I not necessarily follow her advice. I'm not going to lie, but it helps when your promoter or supervisor is also giving the signal that it's okay to have your boundaries and your work-life balance, and that she understands you when sometimes it gets busy and you have to work later or harder, but she also respects that you have your off time.
Yeah, and I think we as PhDs also can have a role, because, of course, your supervisor has to lead by example in a way, but if we give the good signals, it helps as well. And what several people did in our research group is, it's a very small action, but I think it helps a lot. In their email signature, they added this little sentence saying that my work hours may look different than yours, so don't feel obliged to respond to this email if you receive it outside of your normal work hours. And it really gives me so much sort of relief or
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah.
So if we all did that would already contribute to a work environment where we have respect for each other.
We have been talking about the disconnection. However, a digital connection can be very useful. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Definitely. I think with the COVID pandemic, we learned what it has to offer and what all the benefits are. And For example, I started my PhD in the midst of one of the corona waves. I don't remember which one. And I remember my first day was just a meeting with my supervisors where they gave me some general information. But then I had to start. And I was like, oh my God, please someone help me. Like, how do you even start a PhD? There's not a roadmap on how to do that. So luckily, my colleagues who are so nice created a messenger group and they added me. We chatted a little bit and then they also set up a meeting where we got to know each other in a more informal way. And luckily, I at least had these connections with others, which were very important, especially in the beginning of a PhD. Of course, a face-to-face setting, it's more ideal because especially for informal things, it's just smoother and more natural. So for social connection, I think it's very important for PhDs in general. But also, like young researchers and researchers in general, we need to keep in touch with other researchers. And during the pandemic, a lot of seminars and networks have been created where we can share a lot of information with each other. And I think that's also a very positive side of online connection.
That's true. I've been to more conferences in my first year as a PhD online than I would probably do if Corona didn't happen and the switch wasn't made to a digital world. We are talking about disconnect in a way to ignore the thoughts about work by being physically active or talking with friends. But maybe it's also interesting to stand still by the fact that maybe you should talk about your work, very specific, with friends, to get a disconnection, if you know what I mean. What do you think about that? That you have like a small conversation, these are my frustrations, and then you can let it all go.
Yeah, that surely can help. I think people in your private environment can definitely also be a resource for you. I think it can be relieving to talk to others for a couple of seconds. But what I find also important is that you find people in your environment who will also help you to keep this balance. For example, I live with my boyfriend and we regularly work outside of work hours. And often we dare to challenge each other like, hey, is it really so important what you're doing right now? Will something bad happen if you do that on your workday instead of now? And I think that helps as well. We should care for each other in our private life.
It's actually a funny example because I think at the end of my PhD, my boyfriend will need to be congratulated for listening to half of it, because I always come home and I always, like when there's something bothering me, he has to know all about or listens to it, which really maybe he doesn't understand it, but just there listening is very helpful that you can just ruminate about it and just discuss it and then it's off of your mind mostly. Then sometimes he says yeah, but nobody's going to die if you don't do it. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. It's not that important, or it's not that important as I think it is maybe. So it's really helpful that also a person who is not in academia, for example, can say but it's not that bad, right? And then I'm like, yeah, you're right.
We also have a quote of Ralph Kaers, who is a professor at the KU Leuven, and I'm curious what he has to say about this topic.
Being successful as a PhD or postdoc is about working hard while keeping a healthy work-life balance. You can pick work-life separation or work-life integration. Separation means picking a time slot during the day to work, for example 9 to 5. You disconnect from your private life and focus on your work. With integration, the boundaries between work and private time are more blurred. While this is deemed more flexible, it can also lead to a lack of disconnection from work. Still, separation is not necessarily better than integration. As long as you can respect your physical and mental boundaries, you should not be stopped from working on that genius idea that you get at 11 p.m. The real challenge is managing expectations with the people around you. As long as they are aware of your preferred work-life balance, you can start managing expectations and avoid frustrations about conflicting schedules.
So do you prefer the integration or the separation?
I don't know if I can put myself in one of both categories. And I also think that work-life separation and integration, it evolves over time. We are now in a situation where I think we don't have children, for example, if I'm not mistaken. I think when you get children, your life changes a lot because you want to spend some time with them when they come back from school, for example. So I think you will arrange your workday in a different way than you would do now. So I think for this moment, I'm more of a separator because I prefer to do my work in one block. It doesn't mean that I sometimes do not take a break to go running an hour or doing something different. But overall, I think I'm more of a separator. But I think that this might change in the future.
What about you, Ruben? Are you a separator or an integrator?
I think both. I think that's important too with this integration or separation, that when you work, you really work, but at times when you should relax or just enjoy your private time, you really enjoy it. But that's also something I struggle with nowadays or often, that when I'm with friends, that I really enjoy it. I'm there at the moment and not just with my head at work.
Yeah, I think like Rolf says in his quote, it's important that your environment knows how you function. This idea of planning your time, it also holds for the non-work context or the times you're at home. So you can say to yourself like, okay, I will work 1 hour, but after that I will do something for myself and I will, go see friends or something. So by planning it, I think you set a schedule and that can be helping.
Yeah, I think just because doing a PhD, it's like such a long project, then when you're relaxing, sometimes you feel like, oh my God, but I should be working because this is the time I will be missing at the enders. This is something that pops in my head, which of course is not true because you will have normally plenty of time to finish it. But I also think that makes it hard sometimes because it's such a long project you're working on.
It's never ending.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we should also dare to ask ourselves the question, how much importance do I give to my PhD or to my work for people who do not a PhD but still work? And how much do I want to invest in it?
Yeah, very important. Yeah.
And which sacrifices, if I can call it like that, am I willing to make? And making agreements about it with yourself is very important. Because like you say, the work is never finished. And if you don't actively put these limits on yourself, you can actually keep on working and it will never be finished.
We always do a little exercise or we try out some advice together with our guest. And we think it's interesting that we do it here because we think it might also help our listeners. And specifically related to the topic that we discussed here today, like digital disconnection, I think it's interesting that we have a look at the device we use every day, namely our smartphone.
Yeah, I think, indeed, that's an interesting thing.
Which apps and which settings do you use?
I would like to invite you to take your smartphone. I see that you both have an iPhone. And when you go to the settings of your iPhone, there's this feature called screen time. So if you click on it, you see your daily average use of your screen actually. And if you go back in time, you click on see all activity, you can also see your average of the last weeks. So my first question is, what is your daily average?
This is getting personal. It's 3 hours and 11 minutes.
You're the winner because mine is 2 hours and a half. So
yeah, mine is 3 hours and 2 minutes. But still, I mean, I think it's very confronting to see how much time that we spend on it. You can also see which apps you use the most, how many pickups per day, so meaning how many times you unlock your phone a day. And all these numbers are very insightful, I think, and are a good first step to become aware of your phone use. Another thing that you can do is using screen time limits. For example, during work, I have a work mode defined, and when this mode is turned on, I don't receive any notifications except for the notifications from my relatives, so my family, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I use it as well. It's very helpful during work time that you are just not distracted by any notification that can pop up.
And that's on the specific settings of the phone. Do you have some apps that can help us with the focus?
There is a very cool application called Forest. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah, I've heard of it. My friends used it when they studied at college. It helps you plant trees, right?
Indeed. So the idea is that when the app is turned on, it means that you're not on other apps. And the whole time that you spend on this app, you actually grow a tree. So the goal is to let the tree grow through being actually offline.
Okay.
That's very cool.
The nice thing about this app is that it helps to actually plant trees in real life. So
Yeah,
it
that's
can be
very cool, yeah.
motivating, I think.
Indeed.
Okay. Yeah, this is definitely some good suggestions that we can take with us here today. Do you maybe have like some advice you really want to give as a take-home message?
What I find most important when it comes to digital disconnection is to remind that it's something very personal, and we all have different needs, both in our work life, but also in our private life. My take-home message would be remind that it's something very personal, and try to figure out for yourself what works and what doesn't work. Go out and explore with what can be done.
Okay, so I think this brings us to the end of the podcast. We had some very interesting insights here today.
Yeah, and I will definitely use some of your tips and tricks. Thank you very much, Alice, for being here, and see you around.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Mental Health Matters. We hope you got inspired by these stories on how to keep young researchers in a good mental shape.
Our guest in the next episode is Annelle. She will talk to us about her perfectionism and how she copes with it in her daily life.
If you want to know more about these topics and KU Leuven Healthy, visit kuleuven.be/healthy. This podcast is brought to you by KU Leuven Healthy and produced by Chase Creative.